Here we go.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is
not merely peace in our time, but peace in all time.
I have no fear whatsoever of anybody or anything.
Did you think no one was watching?
Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Your mission.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
To reclaim the American dream.
To be given the rights of a human being. To be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities. By any means necessary.
It's the Benjamin Dixon Show. If you're hearing his voice, you're hearing the voice of reason.
You've certainly come to the right place.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon, and you're in for the ride. It's Monday, wherever you are. I hope you're having a good day so far. Weekend is over. What is it? Why does a weekend always go by so fast? I mean, I blinked on Friday night, and here it is Monday morning. So that's actually not completely true because a lot of stuff happened over the weekend that we're going to talk about today. So it just felt like it went by really, really fast. But that's life. I guess the older you get, the faster time goes by. You really want it to go slower. You know, you just want things to slow down a little bit. But things are just going so fast. The weekends blow by. The weeks blow by. And before you know it, it's time to go to work again. So here we are, another Monday, and you've tuned in. I want to thank you personally. You don't have to be here. You could have been anywhere in the world today, but you chose, like Jay-Z said, you chose to be here. So thanks for tuning in. Even if you're listening on demand and you've downloaded this, we thank you for downloading it. And just thinking that I had something enough worthwhile to say for you to give me some of your time, whether you give me the whole hour or you give me 15 minutes of your time. So I'm going to jump right into it. This has been a crazy weekend. You know, sometimes we have crazy weeks, but then other times stuff pops off over the weekend. And over the weekend, it has just been nonstop back and forth on the political scene, particularly dealing with the presidential politics, upcoming presidential election. Scott Walker, making, I think he's making a fool of himself, following behind Rudy Giuliani. And if you haven't tuned in, it's just another thing, It's not necessarily news. It's not necessarily something that I think should be broadcasted. I don't think it's something that we should pay so much attention to, with exception of the next level that they take it to. So what happened so that I can fill you in? What happened over the weekend? Scott Walker piggyback off of Rudy Giuliani, he was afraid to tell Rudy Giuliani that he was wrong in asserting two things. One, that the president didn't love America. And then two, Giuliani said something about President Obama's faith. And so when the reporters asked Scott Walker about it, instead of doing the sensible thing, right? Instead of saying, I don't agree with everyone all the time, and I happen to disagree with Giuliani. I think President Obama loves America. We disagree, obviously. But I don't doubt his love for our country. Instead of doing that, he questions and he furthers it and he tries to punt. I think he thinks that this is some type of grand political scheme to be able to punt, but that's not what you do when you get on the presidential level. You can't get around these questions. You have to answer these questions. And then things got worse over the weekend when he continued to echo Rudy Giuliani and say that he doesn't know if President Obama is a Christian. Now, he tried to be, I don't want to say slick, but he tried to give an esoteric answer, this broad answer of, well, I've never talked to him personally, and I can't say what's in his heart and all those types of things. The bottom line is, if someone says that they are something, regardless of what it is, if someone tells you they're an atheist, if someone tells you they're a Christian, if someone tells you they're transgender, if somebody tells you that they're gay, if that person tells you, take them at their word. It's that simple. Whatever a person says to you that they are, without getting into not even complexities, I was going to say the complexities of faith, It's really simple without getting into the simplicity of faith, of confessing and all that kind of stuff with your mouth and all that, without getting into that. Just take people at their word and stop playing these games, trying to throw red meat. Basically, all this is red meat for their base. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that Republicans, conservatives love. They love talking about President Obama as if he was, and I'm going to be careful how I say this because I don't want you to take this the wrong way, but they love throwing around in their own circles that the president is a Muslim, as if something is wrong with being Muslim in terms of being an American. Like you can't be a sincere American if you're Muslim. That's the kind of mindset that they go with. That's the kind of mindset. And so that happened over the weekend. And then Eric Erickson, RedState.com. He's the editor in chief of RedState.com. This thriving, really popular right-wing conservative website. He has a huge following. He gets on the internet, on Twitter. Of course, everybody makes a fool of themselves on Twitter. And he furthers the conversation. And he says that he doesn't think President Obama is a Christian, at least in no meaningful way. And then someone followed up and said, well, I think, if he's a Christian, then it must only be in the liberation theology sense. Right. There's a whole theology of liberation, and we can get into that another time. I have an open letter that I prepared that I'm going to send out for Eric Erickson. But right now, all that matters is that he has completely dismissed President Obama's entire faith, not just President Obama's faith. So this is what made me a lot upset with it. He completely dismissed the faith of millions of people across the nation and the world. There are a lot of people who view their faith, their Christian faith, through the eyes of God being the God of justice and the God that liberates. I'm not going to go into it too deep because I don't want to get into, we did religion last Friday and we can do religion, every so often. But there's a lot to talk about. And it was amazing how after Friday's show where we dealt with this Republican religion and we dealt with all the nuances of their twisted idea. I think it's a twisted ideology that has perverted the Christian faith. Amazing that as soon as that show was over, the very next morning, Eric Erickson comes out and condemns and dismisses the faith of millions of Americans. And then I had to stop and think about it. Yeah, it's not entirely his fault. It's not. How could you view God through the eyes of people who have been oppressed if you've never been oppressed? Right? How can you read the story of how can these Republicans, a lot of conservatives, and how can they view God through the eyes of the children of Israel who were trying to be free from Pharaoh? How can they view it from that perspective when they are Pharaoh? If you've never been in the position of being oppressed by somebody, then you can't really identify with it. So I understand why he would try to dismiss it because he doesn't understand it. He can't identify with it. But you have to understand, Eric, you don't have the monopoly on Christianity, on faith in general. You can't dictate to the world what their faith is and what their faith isn't. Just because you can't identify with the perspective of being David because you've always been Goliath doesn't mean you dismiss the perspective of all the millions of people who see the world and see God through the eyes of David. Why do they keep bringing religion into politics in the first place? That's the thing. I mean, I guess it's good for me because that's what I do. The nexus, the intersection between faith and religion. That's my thing. I wrote a book about it. I mean, if anybody wants to debate about it, come see me. But there is no religious test for office in the United States. Not that's codified in the Constitution or in our legal system. But we try to put up this thing where we, if they're not Christian, we can't trust them. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Anybody listen to me, sometimes Christians are the worst people for you to ever try to trust. Just because they have the label of a Christian doesn't mean that they're good people. And that's one thing I get tired of. Stop maligning. Stop making it seem that just because somebody doesn't believe what you believe. And in this case, Eric Erickson is saying, because you don't believe the same way that I believe. Like, you might be a Christian, but because you're not evangelical, you're not a Christian in a meaningful way. What is that? Now, if you talk about me cussing you out and I might not be a Christian in a meaningful way because I cussed you out, that's one thing, because, I was 2 seconds from cussing that guy out. That's just, that's my personal struggle. So if you want to talk about the things that I do that may disqualify, that's a whole nother conversation. But simply because I identify with my faith differently than you do, that doesn't give you any right to judge my faith. So, and then what is meaningful? That was his quote. And he's not a Christian in any meaningful way. So then how do you define meaningful? Because I see the president trying to help the middle class. I see the president trying to help people get health care. Jesus was all about healing. I see the president trying to make sure that people can feed their kids and not work 40 hours a week and still be in poverty. So he's helping the poor. He's helping the least among us. And so if that's not being a meaningful Christian, then I don't know what is. Well, how do you then define being meaningful? That's the question I want to know. If the president is not a Christian in a meaningful way, Eric, then how do you define meaningful? You mean he has to it's meaningful if he opposes abortion, and that's it. It's meaningful if he opposes gay rights, and that's it. So they have this very narrow definition, and they bring it into politics all the time. And you notice, I'm trying to tell you, conservative Christians, something. You notice that this type of stuff comes up as we get closer to elections. They don't talk about faith any other time, unless it's something with the Supreme Court. But in general, they don't talk about faith until it's time for elections. That's because they want to get your vote. And that's it. All right. So listen, I want to know what you want to think. I want to know what you think about this thing. I want to know. Give me a call, 857-600-0518. Give me your feedback. What do you think about these comments? Should they even be involving this conversation about what type of Christian he is, what faith he is? Do you feel like, you can share your opinion, but do you feel like the president of the United States has to be a Christian in the first place? 857-600-0518. This is the Benjamin Dixon Show. We're going to come back right after this break, and we're going to deal with this a little bit more. Stay tuned in.
Hey, if you're like me, you're probably hearing the news that the economy is getting better, right? But there's one problem. You still don't have a job. Get back into the game with Chance.com, the state-of-the-art online employment connection for the new generation. Get access to millions of jobs on Chance that are actually hiring now. Stop searching for outdated job postings. Log on to Chance.com. Create a profile, and then be found. Make the connection you need to get hired today. If you're serious about your career, you've got to check this out. Chance.com. Get that job. Make that chance with Chance.com. JANZZ.com.
The traditional light bulb, a groundbreaking invention in 1879. It's time we switch to longer-lasting Energy Star light bulbs. They're more efficient than the old bulbs, like a text message is more efficient than a carrier pigeon. And they cut down on our energy costs. Because in our own groundbreaking age, we deserve a light bulb that saves us some cash. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
You feel petrified. You're struggling with your mortgage payments, not knowing what to do. You do nothing. But if you do something, you're far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making Home Affordable is a free government program. Call 888-995-HOPE to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about your options. Call 888-995-HOPE or visit makinghomeaffordable.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Treasury, HUD, and the Ad Council.
It's 6:42 p.m. Time for Steve Plato and his son Dylan to do the dishes. They talk about everything from the yuckiness of girls to the awesomeness of his soccer team. Sometimes they don't talk at all. Then, hey! The dreaded splash fight. It's Dad o'clock, and it's the best time of the day. Because the smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today. Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Buckle up for the ride. Give us a call, 857-600-0518.
Welcome back from the break. So the last segment we were dealing with this idea that you have to be a Christian to run for office in the United States. And I understand the being comfortable with what you're familiar with. Right. I definitely understand that concept. However, this is America. There is no litmus test for the ability to run for office. I mean, quite frankly, the Republicans are quite possibly getting ready to nominate a guy who did not graduate from college. Right. If there is any qualification, if there would be any qualification, I would think it would be someone who had enough discipline to finish college. That's just me. I know there's a lot of people who did. I dropped out of college. I think I dropped out twice. I can't remember. That was a long time ago. So I understand college isn't for everyone. I understand that even if you go, that doesn't mean you're going to finish. I understand that. But still, there's something about having the discipline to finish college if you start it that makes me more comfortable when you have your finger on the nuclear arsenal. That's just me. So if there's any qualification, maybe something like that, which brings me to another thing that blows me away. If you recall, back in 2008, when President Obama was running for office the first time, people made all types of assertions about President Obama's intellectual capacity and his pedigree, his background, the schools that he went to. Right. They made it seem as though, even some of the more cantankerous radio hosts, they said stuff like he was an affirmative action case, that the only reason he got into Harvard was because of affirmative action, or the only reason he got into Columbia was because of affirmative action. So they completely dismiss his intellectual prowess. Right. And then they said, well, President Obama, where are your transcripts? Yeah, you remember that? They were insisting on, the Republicans were insisting on getting the transcripts and everything they could about President Obama's education. And now they're getting ready to possibly nominate Scott Walker from Wisconsin, who didn't finish college for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe he just got tired of it like I did. I went back and got a couple of degrees working on a PhD, but that's neither here nor there. What's here and there is the hypocrisy, the pure, unashamed, bold-faced hypocrisy to question President Obama, Senator Obama at the time, about his transcripts. And they don't even care that this guy, they're all behind this guy, and they're spinning it. And it's a good spin, by the way. I have to give the Republicans some kudos for this. This is a great spin because 2/3 of Americans don't have a college education or have not finished college. They may have gone, but they didn't finish. So it's a great spin saying that he's the average man. He's the average Joe. That's what they did with George Bush. He was the kind of guy that you wanted to go out and have a beer with. But I want to know how many of you are comfortable with the idea of a person who has not finished college having their thumbs on our nuclear arsenal. It doesn't mean just because you didn't go to college doesn't mean that you're not capable, right? I'm not saying that. I think you're more than capable. I think there's, for instance, James Baldwin, one of my favorite, one of the greatest intellects out that ever existed, never finished high school, So it's not a matter of your intellect is any lower because you didn't finish college or even high school, because there's plenty of evidence of great minds. But to excuse a subpar mind and to wrap it in, he's the average Joe, while simultaneously dismissing the intelligence and the accomplishments of President Barack Obama. That is the height of absurdity. That's the height of hypocrisy. I mean, think about it like this. What if President Obama showed up to the party without a degree? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be completely candid with you. He would never have made it past. He would never have been a state senator. He would have been a U.S. senator. He definitely would not have gotten the Democratic nomination. Now, in all fairness, in all candidness, I think the Democrats on this one need to take their cue from the Republican Party. Now, I'm going to put aside my personal beef with Scott Walker not having his education and them bothering President Obama about his education. I'm going to set that aside for a minute. But I think the Democrats might need to take a cue from their playbook, because a lot of times the Democrats are so elitist. Yeah, I'll say it. They are elitist in the sense that they are only going to look at people with a certain pedigree. You know, how many nominees, how many people in Congress from the Democratic Party, let's say on the Senate level, congressional level is a little easier to get in. But on a statewide election, how many on the statewide election actually come from a non-Ivy League school? I think I'm gonna have to look that up for you. I definitely know we have not nominated a president, a candidate for president that has not been to some level of, whether it was undergrad, graduate, or postgrad, some level of Ivy League education. And what happens is we eliminate a lot of candidates that are firebrands, a lot of candidates who are not afraid, who are not tepid, who are not fearful, who will go out and change the world because they got a chip on their shoulder, because they had to work twice as hard as everybody else just to get where they got in life. You know, we need to start appealing to the average man a lot more in the Democratic Party. So in that regard, and 100% transparency, Democrats, hey, listen to what they are doing with Scott Walker on his education. Now, I happen to think that having an education is great, and that's something that you need. And in all candor, just it is what it is. I just don't think that you can get far being an African-American person without an education. You know, there's some people who can just wake up and never have to go to school in their life because they have enough money. You know, you can't. Our key is education. It is. But that shows the disparity in the system. That shows the disparity in between the two worlds. If you have enough money, then you don't necessarily have to have the same work ethic as everyone else. And everybody says, you know, if you just work hard. No, that doesn't always win. What usually wins are the people who started off with a lot of money in their trust account, regardless of what education they got, regardless of what school they went to or what they accomplished. You know, money goes a long way. But for the rest of us who don't have a lot of money, we have to go to college. Now, that caveat being set aside, I still think the Democratic Party needs to reanalyze how they look, because we need somebody besides Hillary Clinton. I'm just going to be honest with you. If Hillary goes unopposed in a serious way, she can win. That's fine. But we need some strong opposition that is going to challenge her, because we can't let that ascendancy, the next in line. We can't crown somebody. We can't crown the next person. You know, we have to be democratic. This is not a dynasty. If you want a dynasty, go over to the Republican Party. I mean, they're either looking at electing a guy who didn't go to college, or didn't finish college rather, or a guy who is the third in his family, in his immediate family, to be president. Talk about privilege. Talk about the height of privilege. Whereas in our party, you know, hopefully somebody will rise from, and I say our party, I've been a Democrat most of my life, but, I part ways with them on a lot of things. And this is one of them. We can't allow Hillary to run unopposed in a meaningful way, in the sense of somebody with actual funding, somebody with the actual platform, somebody who intends on winning, whether they win or not. So that's my spiel. So speaking of the system and privilege, last night was the Oscars. And I didn't watch a minute of it. One, because I don't personally care, but two, because Walking Dead was on and you can forget about it. I'm watching The Walking Dead, and I'm sure everybody else was watching Walking Dead. As a matter of fact, the ratings were down by 10% this year. I saw that come across my Twitter feed, 10% this year. And what some people credit it to the Oscars So White movement. And if you've paid attention to the news since the nominations, Oscars So White was a hashtag started by a Twitter user called @RaignOfApril. And she started it because this year, above all other years, all the nominees, the actual actors and actresses were all white. I mean, it wasn't just a black thing. It was like there was no faces of color in that. And so they came out with Oscars So White, and they think that, they do know that 10% of the ratings were down, and they're crediting it, a portion of it at least, to the boycott, the silent boycott, just not tuning in. And, they didn't get my ratings because I was watching The Walking Dead. But anyway, last night at the Oscars, Selma, which was all but shut out, they did win one award with Common for Best Song of the Year. Song of the Year, Common and John Legend. And I want to just play a little bit of their speech here.
This bridge transcends race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, and social status. The spirit of this bridge connects the kid from the south side of Chicago, dreaming of a better life, to those in France standing up for their freedom of expression, to the people in Hong Kong protesting for democracy. This bridge was built on hope.
We wrote this song for a film that was based on events that were 50 years ago, but we say that Selma is now because the struggle for justice is right now. Yeah. We know that the voting rights act that they fought for 50 years ago is being compromised right now in this country today.
All right. So that was Common, the rapper Common, and the R&B artist John Legend speaking last night in their award speech. And I thought that was a poignant. I think it was perfectly timed in terms of all of the controversies that are going on, because there are things that are still happening that need to be addressed. And we can't not address it just because people don't want us to. I mean, what kind of men and women would we be if we didn't address what was nearest and dearest to our heart? But here's my dilemma. It's a problem, and it's a personal dilemma. As long as systems are built based on the opinion and the perception of people, we will always be subjected and susceptible to biases and, quite frankly, racism. I mean, that's just the way it is. Now, that's not to say that we shouldn't speak out. That's not to say that we shouldn't protest, that we shouldn't, tear stuff up and figuratively. We shouldn't riot figuratively. It's not that we should be quiet about our grievances. But you have to understand, the Academy is made up of, I think, 80% white people. And it's not that they're incapable of viewing art and saying that this is a great piece of art. But the truth of the matter is, people's preferences and predilections are what they are. And you can't force that to change. Some of the people looked at Selma and thought, oh, it was a great movie. Some of them looked at it and said, I'm tired of hearing these types of stories. Some of them, even you saw a report came out last week saying that some of the Academy were offended by the fact that Selma actors and the staff of Selma, the cast rather of Selma, wore "I Can't Breathe" t-shirts. And so that gives you opens up a window into their mindset. And quite frankly, they have a right to believe what they want to believe, and they have a right to do what they want to do. And so when we see instances like this where a great film, a Oscar-worthy film, is snubbed, we have to understand that it's a tough situation because you're dealing with the preferences of people. And so long as it's disproportionately white, or as long as it is not representative of the broader American society, then we are always going to be in that position. Now, does that mean we should be quiet and not speak up? Absolutely not. But that's my dilemma. My dilemma is I personally believe that a person has a right to see the world exactly how they see it. And this is absolutely where I part ways with a lot of liberals. I personally believe that if a person is biased and racist or whatever they are, if they have a fear of whoever, they have that personal right to be that. But here's where the dilemma becomes a problem for me. See, it's one thing when you have a predominantly white academy that is going to snub black films and only award black actors and actresses who play subservient roles. You know, that's documented. There has not been, with exception of possibly 12 Years a Slave last year. Prior to that, there had not been a single black actor who we can name that was in a role of power and position, but yet they were in roles of, for instance, Denzel. Out of all the movies Denzel was a master in, he got an Academy Award for Training Day, where he was a criminal thug police officer. Out of all the acting of Halle Berry, with the exception of Storm and X-Men, because that should just disappear from the ether. That should just go away. No one should ever remember her performance as Storm from X-Men. But prior to that, she had some excellent roles. But she got a role of a stereotypical black woman whose husband was in jail, and single black woman. And her role was not one that was reflective of the average black American. And she got an Oscar for that. So I can go on and on and on, right? That's one thing, and that's problematic, and we should speak out, and we should say what's on our mind. Like, they have the right to be whatever they are. They have the right to have their preferences. They have the right to have their opinions and their biases, but we have a right to criticize and critique and bring correction to those things that we disagree with, right? So that's going to be a constant battle, a constant struggle. Fine, that's a problem. That's a struggle. But where the real problem is when people who are the jury of our peers have those same biases and those same predilections, and they view us and they view people, whether it be men, black men, whether it be women in general or black women in specific, when they view us through the lenses of their biases. That's problematic, because we see it's one thing not to get an Oscar nod, right? It's another thing for someone to see me on the street, and because of their predisposition and because of how they view black people, they're going to be more likely to call the cops on me and profile me. It's the same exact scenario. You're dealing with people's inner biases. You're dealing with people's inner predilections and the way they view the world. And if they view the world through the lenses of these biased statistics and all of these lies that are put out about these false narratives that are put out about African Americans, if that's how they view the world, then imagine what happens when they become the jury of your peers. Imagine what happens when they have to serve on a grand jury. Imagine what happens when that police officer who's suffering from the same biases and the same viewpoint sees black people all the same, when he rolls up on you and sees a criminal before he sees a human being. Now, listen, it's all a part of the same narrative. It's all part of the same crooked roots. It's all of the part of the same roots that need to be rooted out, right? But you have to understand that this is something that, let me give you an example. A lot of people tell you to dismiss, to just completely forget about all of the racist comments that you would see on the internet, right? people say, why do you even engage in that? Why do you even see that? Why don't you just ignore them? They're only trolls. The reason I always address it and bring it up is because those are the same people who make up the jury of your peers. Those are the same people who are working in the modules next to you. Some of those same people that you would think are trolls are living in your neighborhood. Now, if you want to just dismiss them as trolls, that's your prerogative. But I happen to look at it and see that this is a reflection of what America is today. And so the same poison, the same venom that comes from the very bottom, the same gutter, what you call trolls, it goes all the way up through our judicial system. And that's exactly how we get profiled. That's exactly how people the cops are called disproportionately so on African Americans. Blacks are stopped disproportionately so by police officers. That's how it happens. And so as I was listening and watching my Twitter feed on the Oscars last night, I was bothered because, yes, we can't force them to like content that we think is quality, that we think is top notch. But at the same time, that same mindset that has a predisposition to dismiss blackness, that same mindset that has a predisposition to view blackness a certain way, that's the same mindset that trickles down all the way to the trolls who you want to dismiss as trolls. But I'm going to be honest with you. Wait till they serve on the jury of your peers. And you'll see how big and how dynamic that problem really is. So that's my spiel. That's just how I feel about it. I don't know how you feel about it. You can completely disagree with me, and that's your prerogative. That's quite all right. It doesn't matter to me if you disagree with me or not. I know what I know, and that even though people, and this is a constant battle for me, a constant struggle in my mind. I go to war with myself about this all the time. Even though people have the right to be and should have the right to be who they are, it's when their ideas of me cause me undue grief and burden, and not just grief and burden, but also could cost me my life. Yeah, that's when it's time. And that's why it's always time. That's why I'm trying to help people understand from my perspective, from our perspective, from it's not just a matter of black and white, but it's a matter of perspective and how you view the world. And because how you view the world, that's ultimately how you're going to view me. And so long as we have to live together, I need you to view me as a human being first, and then allow me to unpack myself to you. And maybe you feel like, oh, I don't have enough time, I have to make a judgment call. Well, then the problem is yours, because you're now making a judgment call based on my skin color, and you're making a judgment call based on your predisposition towards us. All right, I'm going to pull myself out of there. Let's take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to have one more segment. I got a couple of clips to play for you. I'm going to take some calls, and we'll go on with going like that. All right, this is the Benjamin Dixon Show.
You're tuned in to the Benjamin Dixon Show. Join the conversation, 857-600-0518.
Looking for the right business opportunity? Need the right product, the right marketing plan, and the absolute best training in the world? Well, look no further. The Elite Team. Every leader in time excels. They believe the key ingredients in becoming successful in life and in business are just a keystroke away. Go to www.eliteteamsite.com. That's www.eliteteamsite.com. The Elite Team has a system in place that will move you closer to achieving your goals and dreams. Visit www.eliteteamsite.com or TonyFlemingEnterprises.com today.
College is important, but it can also be expensive. College Planning Services is a group of educators, administrators, counselors, and other licensed professionals that work together to provide the necessary services, networks, and information to reach students that are serious about getting a college education. College Planning Services partners with financial institutions, corporate sponsors, and other major players in the global market to strategize in building a pool of information regarding financial aid, scholarships, and funding information to assist students in preparing to access the essential resources to build upon their path to an educational future. Learn more at collegeplanningtoday.com and let us help you start your college career.
Do you want to take your business to the next level? Ultimate Business Solutions provides the support you need to increase your customer base and sell more products and services online. Specializing in graphic arts, web development, and internet marketing, Ultimate Business Solutions creates the face of your business. If you're looking for a custom logo, dynamic website, or popping marketing material, call Ultimate Business Solutions today at 404-704-2197 or visit www.ultimatebizsolutions.com. Ultimate Business Solutions. Let us create your future.
Do you have tax issues, owe back taxes, or need tax relief? Contact L&B Tax Service today. L&B offers you over 15 years of expertise and first-class tax service for individuals, professionals, and business owners. With nationwide service, you can easily find a location near you. Contact one of our tax professionals through our website, lbtaxservice.com. That's www.lbtaxservice.com. L&B Tax Service Incorporated. Tax professionals that you can trust.
You've tuned in to The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Hey, no, no, hey, no,
all right. Welcome back to The Ride, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. And so last segment, I was dealing with the politics of race and this Oscars last night. And one of the things is it's always connection. You know, there's a connection between how they view and treat President Obama. It's the same vein that goes down to the snub for a Selma movie. And it all the way down to this next clip that I'm getting ready to play for you. It's an old clip, but and by old, I mean it's like 3 months old. I think it first aired on ABC back in December-ish, sometime December 2014. So it's maybe 3 months old, but that's old in the world of the internet. But it just came across my plate like last week, and one of my Twitter friends asked my opinion on it yesterday. So I finally took the time to actually watch it, and so I want to play it for you, and you tell me what you think.
My name is Lawrence Otis Graham. I'm an attorney. My wife's an investment banker. We both went to Harvard. I went to Harvard Law School and Princeton undergrad. My wife went to Harvard College, Harvard Law School, Harvard Business School. And we have 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. For us, I think it was when the Trayvon Martin incident happened, when he was shot, because we thought our boys could have been in the very same circumstance, that could easily be our own sons. So that's when we realized we had to have the conversation. We are black, we're black, but we have to address it in certain ways by making sure that we're wearing clothes that are not ones that suggest that we are part of the criminal element, as people would say. It's no hoodies, it's no dark clothes. My boys know that they've got to be khaki pants. We don't do sweatshirts with words and names on them. This is really casual for them. They don't do the t-shirt thing. And when it comes to jackets, raincoats, this is the only time you're going to see a hood in our house is on a raincoat. Or a winter jacket. It's no colored high tops. It's loafers. It's white tennis sneakers. It's not carrying anything in your hand after sundown that could be misconstrued as a weapon. It's also making sure that when they go to stores, they get receipts. That they walk in, they make eye contact and nod and smile to the shop owner. They make sure that their bags are zipped and left in the car or outside the store. It's also making sure that they never run when in the presence of a police officer unless it's very apparent that they're dressed for jogging. They don't go out after sundown. My younger son said, "You're taking the fun out of being a black kid," but it just knows it's necessary. And once again, it's not because we're trying to make them white. It's just the whole issue of we don't want them to be profiled. My children are surrounded by black role models, and we wanted our children to know this is what black people can become, and we're holding them at the same high standard. My biggest fear for my black boys is I don't want them shot. I don't want them tasered. It's as simple as that. It's no longer even an issue of I wanted them to be treated with the same respect and dignity of other kids that are not black, that are their age. It's just, I want to keep them alive.
I want to keep them alive. So when I first saw the video, and actually when I saw the title of the video, you have to be careful not to read these titles and make assumptions based on the title, because my first reaction was, who is this cat and where is he coming from with this nonsense? And honestly, even after I watched the video the first time, I was like, this dude has lost his mind. He should know better than this. How is he promoting this message? But then I stopped listening and started watching him, right? There was a desperation in his eyes that I could understand. When he put it in perspective of just wanting his kids to not be profiled, I understood where he was coming from. Not profiled nor or tasered, and he just wants them to come home alive. I completely understood where he was coming from. I didn't agree with him. I still don't agree with him, but I can understand his desperation. And that's all you could really see in this guy's eyes. Here he is providing this elegant lifestyle for his kids, but he's cognizant of the fact that no matter how much money his career and his pedigree and his wife's career and pedigree have earned them, their kids are still susceptible to the same problems that the boys on the block are. And so he understood that let me start that sentence over, because I don't agree with I don't agree with the idea that all we have to do is dress a certain way and everything will be okay. That's called respectability politics. And respectability politics, I have a problem with it because it does two things. It gives the authority to the system to define what is okay for you as an individual. And I completely reject that notion. Completely, 100%. I'm too old to care what somebody else thinks about me. You are not the benchmark by which my life will be measured. Your opinions of me matter to you. They don't matter to me. And so I don't give anyone that kind of authority over my life. And you shouldn't either. If you're living your life based on the confines of somebody else's expectations, then you need to be set free. If you go to church, you need to go get deliverance. If you don't go to church, you need to bust out of that thing, man, because you cannot live your life based on what somebody else is saying is okay for you. You have to define for yourself what is normal, what is acceptable, and what is okay. Nobody else has that right to do that. And that's what respectability politics does. It says that if I just dress the way the system wants me to dress, then everything will be okay. And I think I said I had two problems with it, but I actually have three. The second one is that's not true. You can still be dressed in a 3-piece suit. You could be in a tailor-made suit, and you will still be viewed through the eyes of criminality if that's the predisposition of the person looking at you. In other words, the best example I can give is for myself. I was coming out of a sports bar with my brother a couple of months back, and for whatever reason, I just decided to dress clean. I was sharp. I had on a pea coat, a designer pea coat. I had on my Michael Kors scarf. I had on my wingtip shoes. I mean, I was clean because I just felt like, I felt like getting clean, right? And as we came out, and my brother, he was dressed the way he was dressed. So we were coming out, he wasn't dressed badly, but he was with me. And I was, we presented ourselves. We presented ourselves how we because that's just how we want to roll, right? That's our prerogative. We come out of this sports bar, not in Mississippi, mind you. We're in Massachusetts. We come out of the sports bar, and this white guy, random white guy, it does matter what race he was. It was a random white guy, stops us and asked us where we were going, as if we had a responsibility to explain ourselves to him. He felt so empowered by the fact that he was white and we were black, that he felt he had the right to ask us where we were going and what our intentions were. And later on in the brief conversation, because, I controlled the conversation, but in that brief conversation, he started to assert the fact that, well, if you're headed that way, just look for the courthouse, because I know you guys have been, you two been at the courthouse. This is not while I'm wearing a hoodie. This is not while I'm wearing my Boston Red Sox hat. This is not where I'm wearing my Timberlands. This is not, I was dressed professionally and he was dressed like an alcoholic. Engineer says some people would view that would argue that Mississippi and Boston are quite alike. I would testify to it because I've lived in both. I've lived in Boston and I lived in Jackson, Mississippi. So I can tell you that there's a lot of similarities. And so even though this is a liberal bastion, this is a blue state through and through, even though we just elected Charlie Baker, but that's neither here nor there. The point of the story is this. I was dressed respectably, and yet I still got profiled, not by the police, but by a random white guy. So the idea that respectability politics will keep you from getting profiled is just not true. So the first problem I have with it is, what gives them the right to define what is appropriate unless they're paying my bills, right? And if you're paying my bills, then we'll have a conversation. But then 2, that does not keep you from getting profiled. And 3, it gives the system itself a pass. It says that there's nothing wrong with the system, but there's something wrong with me. How is that acceptable? Let me take myself out of the equation. Let me give you another example. Women can identify with this because I've seen this firsthand. You can be dressed like you're going to the club. You can be dressed hell, you could be dressed like a stripper, right? And get harassed by men. You can also be dressed like a nun and get harassed by men. So this idea that if women would just dress a certain way, I got in a big argument about that this morning, that if women would just dress a certain way, that everything would be okay and no one would harass them, that's a lie. I know it's a lie because I've seen it firsthand. I don't think I've been guilty of it. I'm trying to think back. I don't think I've been guilty. I don't harass women. First of all, I don't harass women, but it doesn't matter if a woman is dressed I'm about to show my age. Oh God, I'm about to show my age. It doesn't matter if they have on Daisy Dukes or full length jeans. The system is designed so that men feel they have the right to address women a certain way and to undress them with their eyes. And respectability politics will not protect women. And even if it could, why do the women have to change? Why is it incumbent upon the victim to always change and for us to look at the system and give the system a pass? All right, go one step further. Actually, no, I'm going to roll it back because I don't want to get too worked up about this idea. But it really ticks me off, this idea that we have to change to be okay for you, that all we need to do is wear a suit and clean up our act. Well, I mean, take a look at the president, the cleanest, the most successful, in terms of politics, the most successful African American in American history. And still he's addressed as if he was somebody's boy, and they address him as the welfare president. And they dismiss his education while letting this guy from Wisconsin, who doesn't even have a degree, be in the conversation about presidential politics. Do you see that juxtaposition? Do you see that glaring contradiction? And so it does not matter how we dress. It should not matter. We should not have to conform. The system should be big enough to incorporate all of our uniquenesses and all of our individual ways of living. And we should stop looking at people and saying, if that black guy had not been dressed like a thug, he wouldn't have got profiled. How about we challenge the system and say, stop profiling everybody who is not dressed in a manner that you approve? How about that? How about we tackle the system and say, instead of attacking women and say if they weren't dressed like whores, then no. How about you define what is good for you and mind your business and let anyone else live and dress and carry themselves exactly how they want to? Are we not the land of the free? Should we not be free, or are you comfortable? You tell me, are you comfortable with the idea that there's a group of people in America who have the right to define what is normal, what is acceptable, and what is okay for everybody else? What if I came to your home and told you how you should raise your children? What if I came to your church? What if I came to evangelical churches and told them how they should preach? We would be in an uproar. We would be ready to turn stuff out. You think they rioted in Ferguson? Imagine if I went to Mississippi and told them what they could and could not teach in their churches on Sunday, because what they're teaching is not acceptable by my standard. But yet we flip it around and we try to assert what people should and should not wear, how people should and should not talk, what parents should and should not name their children. I shouldn't have to give my children a European name for them to be acceptable. But we have a system that if they see a name that is remotely ethnic, then they won't even get the interview. Respectability politics says that you are going to conform to the system in order for you to get by and to be accepted by the system. And that if you conform to the system won't target you and you won't be a victim of the system. But that's a lie. The system will still destroy you, kill you, rape you, plunder you, pillage you. It will do everything to you because something is wrong with the system. And what happens is once it comes across your desk, then you realize, it's not until you experience it firsthand. It's not until you see it firsthand that you realize that there maybe, quite possibly, was something wrong with the system the entire time. And while you are so busy calling women who dress a certain way a whore, you should have been fighting against a system that allows us to dictate how women should dress. While you're so busy telling your kids how to dress so that the cops won't stop them, only to realize later that you were in a tailored suit driving in a Bentley and you still got profiled when you got out and went into the store. Maybe then you'll realize that there's something wrong with the system and not anything wrong with you. I'm telling you, there's two types of people in the world. I'm about to get out of here. We got stuff to do today. There's two types of people in the world. There's a type of people in the world who look at the world, everybody else, and says that there's something wrong with them and they need to change. And then there's the other type of people who look inside of themselves and said, there's something wrong with me and I need to change. And I'll throw a third person on there. There's a type of person who says there's something wrong with me. But you know what? I accept who I am, and I don't care that you think something is wrong with me. That's really where I am in my life, and that's where you should be. And so if that's where you are in your life, you understand why when I listen to that video of that man, I understand his heart was broken. I understand that he was hurting. I understand that he was desperate, but I also understand that he was wrong, and that we cannot allow the system to dictate how we should live our lives when the system is the problem in the first place. All right, folks, it's about that time. Listen, I appreciate you joining in with me today. I appreciate you coming and listening in to the thoughts that I have. Listen, we'll be back on Wednesday, same time, same channel. You can check out more information at thebenjamindixonshow.com. And listen, I just thank you for thinking it was worthwhile your time. More importantly than just sharing and coming and being here, I really want you to listen and act. I want you to act. I want you to be the type of person that moves and does something about what you see. If you see an injustice, if you see a guy harassing a woman, if you see a person profiling a black guy, if you see problems, don't just tweet about it. Don't just say something on the internet. Get active and do something about it. This is the world. This is our world. And it's going to be whatever we make it. All right. I'm your host, Benjamin Dixon. Thanks for joining me. We'll catch you on Wednesday.